January 2nd, 2020. Second day of the new year, and of course life already decided to bully poor Lee Wai-young. His boiler quit on him like an unpaid intern. Steam hissed from the pipes like the apartment itself was mocking him. Our boy stood there in his blue t-shirt frowning, as if frowning could fix the pipes. Spoiler, it couldn't. Then came a neighborhood fossil, slippers slapping the floor like war drums. This old man, armed with a broom and a bad attitude, screamed about kids these days wasting heat. Yes, Grandpa Scrooge really thought socks and duct tape could replace central heating. The residents peeked out from their doors, probably wondering if they should clap or throw them out the window. Wai-young knew if he told Broom Grandpa about the boiler, he'd get blamed, charged double rent, and probably scolded for breathing too. He even fantasized about burying the old man in the yard, then remembered corpses don't exactly make great fertilizer. The wind whistled through his sorry excuse for a room. Cobwebs, mocking him from the corners. He hugged himself like a rejected snowman and sneezed. Yep, this home felt more like a freezer with furniture. And because he was weak to manipulation, the old man sealed the windows. Brainwashing worked. So, off he went to buy film for the windows, shivering like a penguin who lost custody of his ice block. At 9 p.m., our hero shuffled into a store. Hoodie up, he asked the clerk where the film was. She smiled too brightly, probably hiding the urge to laugh at this frostbitten loser. She pointed him to aisle F. He thought the store had everything except, central heating. Meanwhile, some brat swung a wrench like it was Thor's hammer, begging his dad to buy it. Dad in a blue shirt shot him down with a timeless parent excuse. Why do you need it? Kids reason. It has a comfortable handle. Yeah, future psychopath right anyway. Our tragic hero reflected on his oh-so-meaningful name, Lee Wai-young, which allegedly meant peaceful achievement. Irony alert, his life had been anything but. Abandoned, dumped in a shelter, beaten up by kids in white shirts who probably thought they were angels. Little Lee fought back, because if life hands you trauma, you might as well return it with interest. Growing up, he decided money equals power. Sadly, his grades were garbage, his wallet was emptier than his fridge, and all he could get was dead-end jobs. Cue the courier gig, delivering packages with the excitement of a zombie mailman. Every coin he earned just reminded him how worthless his time was. Then came the machete. He picked one up in the store like a man caressing his soulmate. The girl glanced at the man with the card, asking quietly what could make someone smile, while holding the man admitted he didn't know and had no intention of getting close. Lee Wai-young's grin reflected sharply in the blade, stirring memories he had long tried to forget. He remembered the days when his hard work couldn't earn even 10,000 won, when selling himself into slavery still wouldn't be enough, and when orphans were barred from military service. It was that frustration that drove him into the life of a mercenary. He had joined the first squad, a band of orphans and societal cast-offs, those who had nothing left to lose. For people like him, the squad offered a bed, clothes, and enough money to survive. Lee Wai-young had learned to be grateful despite the blood and chaos. Together, they cleared pirates from the seas, decapitated terrorists on land, and occasionally fought in international wars to set their own price. The salesgirl touched the machete carefully, remarking that it was worth 240,000 won. She questioned what he intended to do with it, suggesting it was better suited for a collection than for logging or camping. She offered to show more practical alternatives, but Lee Wai-young waved it off. It suited him. He had been thinking about a new machete for some time. His old one was blunt. He pointed at the film behind the salesgirl, asking for 10 m. She began slicing it with a stationary knife, her cuts jagged and uneven. Lee Wai-young's irritation was visible. The blade was so dull, she couldn't even cut straight. He instructed her to step back. She looked up, questioning silently. With a swing of the machete, he cut through the film in a clean, precise line. The girl stared in disbelief at the neat cut. Lee Wai-young turned at the commotion behind him. A crowd had gathered, murmuring about something or someone startlingly real. Requests for pictures filled the air, and shadows stretched long across the pavement. Then came a movement that froze him. A small goblin, knife in hand, lunged at the fleeing crowd. One man looked back, shock etched across his face, just in time to meet the creature's vicious smile. The goblin struck swiftly, and blood erupted from the man's body. He crumpled to the ground dead, while the goblin crouched over him, surveying its work. People screamed, blood flew, and our boy realized life had upgraded from broken boiler to actual monster invasion. The goblin lunged at him. Reflexively, Wai-young swung the machete. Slash. One goblin minus a head. Congratulations, kid. You're now promoted to mercenary hero. The store floor turned into a gore festival. Blood, bodies, trash everywhere. Goblins grinned like psychotic clowns. A woman shielded her daughter, trembling. Wai-young cut through one like a butcher chopping cucumbers, but muttered that his machete was more of a club than a dude, was mid-apocalypse, and still critiquing his weapon. Then more goblins flooded in. Because of course they did. He wasn't fighting a few monsters, he was fighting the entire DLC expansion pack. Other survivors scrambled to help. One guy with an axe was trying to look cool. Another with blonde hair grabbed a nail gun like he was starring in Home Alone, Apocalypse Edition. Some bespectacled wimp prayed to God. Wrong move. Why Young roasted him. Prayer won't save you. Get up or die. Savage but fair. Even 4 random guys formed a squad. Axe guy, nail gun guy, glasses guy, and chainsaw guy. Together, they tried to survive, hacking goblins while bathing in green blood. Glasses boy, to his own surprise, chainsawed a goblin in half. Why Young even complimented him. Probably the first and last compliment that nerd would ever receive. Then came the grand reveal, a glowing vortex spewing monsters nonstop. Destroy it. Why Young barked like he actually had a plan. Of course he didn't. 2 more goblins jumped out, and everyone knew this wasn't just a broken boiler day anymore. Why Young peeked from behind the shelf like a paranoid raccoon and realized the goblins just kept pouring out. The spatial rift looked like something out of a low-budget sci-fi movie, except it was vomiting actual monsters instead of special effects. Any scientist would have dropped their PhD and gone home crying. A group of goblins were munching on a woman's corpse like it was a buffet. Why Young, because he thinks he's Mr. Tactical Genius, started counting down from 5 to 1. Glasses boy, still clutching his chainsaw like it was a teddy bear, asked, "What are you talking about?" Why Young explained with the confidence of a man who'd just discovered multiplication. 10 goblins per wave, 10 minutes between each. Now we've got 26. Translation, math says you're all screwed. And even though he understood the waves, he had no idea how to stop them. The store was filled with bad weapons, axes, crowbars, chainsaws, all great if you wanted to cosplay as a lumberjack, but terrible against an army of green psychos. One slip, and you'd be on the goblin dinner menu. Our hero gritted his teeth, thinking if only he had a firearm, life would be right on cue. Someone yelled fire, and a rocket launcher lit up the store like New Year's fireworks. Soldiers stormed in, yelling about being the counterterrorism task force of the Metropolitan Defense Command. Finally, professionals, or so they claimed. A tank even rolled in. Yes, a tank in a shopping mall, because apparently the military's motto is property damage first, questions later. Bullets shredded goblins, saving a man and his kid. The shop clerk crouched, covering her head like that would protect her from becoming an accidental tank pancake. Why Young exhaled, lowering his chainsaw. A goblin corpse dripped green goo in front of him. Glasses boy, now trying to act human again, awkwardly thanked him. Introduced himself as Kim Bo-on. Why Young, too tired to care, brushed him off. He didn't like weaklings. Weak people were ballast, and he'd spent his mercenary career learning one thing: ballast sink ships. But Bo-on wasn't the only problem. The soldiers weren't exactly Schwarzeneggers, either. Their breathing was ragged, their stances sloppy. Why Young sneered, great. The professionals weren't any better than goblins, dodged their gunfire like acrobats. So what did he do? Walked up to a soldier, stuck his hand out, and demanded the machine gun. Told him his name, and dropped the first squad bomb like it was supposed to mean the soldier blinked, confused, and before he could process, Why Young just yoinked the weapon. Another soldier cursed him out, but Why Young didn't care. He mowed down goblins like it was Duck Hunt in real life. The soldiers stared in shock. One muttered about him being from that first squad, the ruthless mercenaries people told campfire horror stories about. Meanwhile, Why Young was blasting away with all the emotion of a man checking his emails. Then came the real punchline. A giant blue dialogue box popped up. Game restart. Why Young froze. His head throbbed. As if surviving goblins, tanks, and mall chaos wasn't enough. Now reality was breaking the fourth wall. He didn't know what kind of game this was, but reload instead of load confused him. Honestly, same. Before he could process, a massive orc crawled out of the rift, roaring like a WWE wrestler. Bullets bounced off its skin like pebbles. Everyone panicked. One guy even jumped in swinging an axe like a man auditioning for a Viking LARP group. And here's the twist. The cowardly Kim Bo-on, yes, the same dude who was crying and praying earlier, suddenly went full. He slashed the orc's legs, dropping it like a sack of bricks, and calmly explained its weak spot like he'd been doing orc autopsies his whole life. Then he chopped its head clean off. Everyone gawked, especially Why Young, who was mentally screaming. Wasn't this clown trembling 10 minutes ago? It didn't stop there. The brat who earlier begged his dad for a wrench. Now he was swinging it like Thor's hammer, smashing orcs with the confidence of a seasoned gladiator. The sweet store clerk, who couldn't cut window film straight. She was spinning a chain around like she'd escaped from Cirque du Soleil, toppling monsters with dead eyes and perfect precision. Wei Young's brain, almost people who were trembling nobodies minutes ago, were suddenly pro-level fighters. Something was seriously broken. The soldiers ordered to cease fire, cheering like idiots. Survivors cried that their prayers had been answered. But Wei Young wasn't celebrating. He noticed the difference. Some people transformed, others didn't. Why? How? Before he could think more, another glowing blue dialogue box appeared. No training available. You may ask 3 questions about the game. Choose wisely. Great. A queue in a pop-up window in the middle of an orc invasion. Because what every traumatized mercenary really needs is an FAQ section. The box explained this was a test system for humanity with video game features. Wei Young called BS. The box simply repeated, choose wisely. The voice that spoke to Wei Young sounded like a woman's and instantly annoyed him. Because nothing says epic apocalypse like Siri nagging you from a blue box. He realized brute force wouldn't solve this one. He didn't even have a body here, just floating text and a voice like a bad audiobook narrator. The box chirped that his status window was now available. Translation: he had just unlocked the worst RPG character sheet ever. The glowing words proudly level 1, Wei Young. Endurance 1, Agility 1, Strength 1, Concentration 1, Mana 1, Bonus Points 1, Achievements none, Skills none. Basically weaker than an asthmatic toddler. Wei Young chuckled nervously, because when life drops a cosmic joke in your lap, what else can you do? The voice went on about players all over the world and gates leading to dungeons, but Wei Young cut it off like a guy sick of tutorials. He asked if he really had to train and stop humanity from extinction. The box, clearly impressed, called him a fast learner, which was insulting, considering the bar was currently on the floor. Then he asked why Kim, the shop girl, and glasses didn't get the same messages. Boom, error. The dialogue box turned red, screaming like a Windows 98 crash. It declared, Wei Young is the only non-regress translation. Everyone else got sent back from the future with cheat codes, except him. He was stuck as the no DLC trial grade. He remembered screaming on battlefields, begging to take it all back. And apparently the universe heard him and said, nah, let's make you the tutorial boss instead. While he was processing that existential punchline, some random woman smacked his back and told him to go fight. He roasted her instantly. When monsters were in her face, she was trembling like a chihuahua, so maybe she should shut up. She blinked, terrified, which was then Kim strutted over, suddenly acting like they were best friends. He reintroduced himself and confessed he'd been looking for Wei Young all his life. Crawling through dungeons just to meet bro, was cheesing like a fanboy at Comic-Con. Claimed if Wei Young hadn't given him a chainsaw, he'd have been Monster Chow. Wei Young deadpan thought, wow, regression makes cowards into motivational speakers. Kim then dropped that every player in Korea knew his name, because apparently Wei Young was the guy who entered the last dungeon. News to him. He could barely keep track of what was happening, and now he had fanboys quoting his non-existent highlight reel. The shop assistant clutched her chest dramatically, saying it was an honor to fight beside him. The kid with the wrench gushed about how he'd never forget seeing Wei Young flip off reporters before entering the dungeon. The group circled him like he was some washed-up rock star. Wei Young's brain screamed, these clowns are regressed players, all of them. Kim begged him to share stories of the last dungeon. Wei Young opened his mouth, but the system rudely interrupted. Unique skill search complete. Result, butterfly effect, level 1. A skill that gave him extra points whenever he did something different than his past self. Basically, life turned him into a cosmic speedrunner. He understood the butterfly metaphor well enough. Flap once, and suddenly tornadoes, dead goblins, or Kim having a personality. Before he could enjoy the irony, orcs stormed through the rift. The regressors charged like they'd been training for this cutscene their whole lives. Wei Young calmly opened fire with his machine gun, but noticed something odd. He was the only one who could see the monsters' names and levels glowing above their heads. Orc level 2, it read. Very immersive, very annoying. Bullets pinged off the orc like spitballs, proving guns were decorative at best. The regressors, of course, knew exactly where to strike, aiming for weak points like it was second nature. The shop girl lassoed an orc's leg with her chain. Kim chopped another in the knees, and Glasses actually remembered he had a spine. Wei Young sighed, handed the useless gun back to a soldier, and picked up a regression really was cracked. These people got free cheat sheets, while he was still figuring out if the safety was then his skill-activated butterfly effect. You changed the future. +1 point. He blinked. Apparently just swapping weapons counted. Fine. He grabbed an axe. Butterfly effect. Plus he tossed it for a drill. Butterfly effect. +1. At this rate, he could farm points by juggling hardware. An orc charged, and he flung the axe into its knee. The beast toppled. Wei Young rushed in, axe raised, and decapitated it clean. Butterfly effect. +1. He grinned. Finally, a system he could exploit. He asked Kim to remind him what he used to fight these monsters in their past lives. Kim replied that Wei Young used a chainsaw. That was all Wei Young needed. If he did anything differently from their so-called past, it altered the future. Kim then told Wei Young that at this point, he killed 3 orcs by himself. Wei Young asked how, and Kim smugly pointed at some buckets of solvent stacked on the shelf. Stuff for thinning paint, but hey, it also lights up like gasoline. Wei Young grinned. Oh, so pyromania was your big secret. He realized that in his other life, he must have doused the orcs in solvent and set them on fire. So this time, if he didn't use it, or maybe if he overused it, he'd twist that he picked up a bucket. Butterfly effect activated. Plus 1 point. Like clockwork, the others, exhausted, went along with his plan, which was less plan and more arson with friends. They crippled orcs, he poured solvent on them, and set the whole mess ablaze. The flames roared, goblins screamed, and the system rewarded him. Butterfly effect. Plus 1 point. Level up. Plus 3 extra points. Wei Young stood in the firelight like some goth pyromancer, convinced now. Do the opposite of your past life, get free points. The system was basically begging him to troll fate. Then came the new achievement, Brave Reward, Armor Level 1. Defense buff, proportional to strength. Sounds cool until his hands literally turn black. Looking down, he muttered, "The hell is this?" Cute, jealous whining. A guy cursed that he thought he'd be the one to get that skill. The girl with the metal pipe frowned, muttering that it was a problem, because Wei Young supposedly used the skill in the past to crush the whole of Korea. Oh, lovely. Already infamous for future war crimes he hadn't even committed yet. Rift with purple energy opened up, announcing the dungeon details like a video game menu. Goblins, 11. Orcs, 8. Max players, 4. Difficulty, D. Wei Young looked at it and thought, oh, this whole system's goal is to wipe out humanity. Goo. Kill the monsters inside, or they'd pour out and wreck. Only one way to deal with gates, exterminate every last creature. Difficulty D meant loot wouldn't be great, but he had a different plan, testing his new armor skill. Because unlike the regressors who came with cheat codes, he needed raw, visible power. So he dumped all his extra points into strength from 16, because if you're going to min-max, might as well become a walking. He stepped into the portal with Kim, Chainsaw Boy, and Pipe Girl trailing nervously behind. The dungeon smelled like death and bad game design. A goblin lunged from the shadows and bit Wei Young's arm. He didn't even flinch. Armor activated. His blackened hand clamped onto the goblin's skull, squeezed, and pop. Goblin brains everywhere. Butterfly effect plus 1 point. The others froze. Pipe Girl stammered. That Chainsaw Boy cursed. Kim gawked like he was watching his celebrity crush in Wei Young's strength stat was now 16, and he proved it by crushing a monster's head like a grape. Kim crept closer, still drooling admiration. But then greed oozed. He said the armor skill was the only one of its kind, and it was the reason Wei Young had been the strongest player in Korea. Translation, I want it. Hand it over. Kim pulled a snake move, snatching Chainsaw Boy's weapon and hurling it at the blade roared. It should have shredded him, but he calmly blocked it with his armored hand. Sparks flew. He chuckled darkly. Even without regression, you think this is enough? Pathetic. Then he grabbed the spinning chainsaw by the blade itself, squeezed, metal groaned, the teeth bent. He tossed the ruined thing to the floor like trash. And before Kim could blink, Wei Young's black hand wrapped around his throat. A blue box floated above Kim's head, level 3. Not bad, not enough. What pity, he thought. Greed breed destruction. We're already taught him that, carved the lesson into his skin with scars, and now Kim, like every other idiot who thought regression was a cheat code, was choking on it. Dangling him by the neck like a rag doll, Wei Young turned to the others. Any more applicants? Their response, open mouths, wide eyes, trembling like wet puppies. He dismissed them with a flat order. Then came the crunch. His grip collapsed Kim's throat, and the body hit the floor like wasted meat. To Wei Young, mercy was just another word for weakness. In war, sparing enemies wasn't thanks. It wasn't here. The law didn't mean jack anymore. The coward scurried back. He glared at Pipe Girl and Chainsaw Boy, warning them if they valued their lives, they'd get out of his sight. They didn't need a second invitation. Then came the cruel joke of the system. A glowing inventory box floated over Kim's corpse, turning death into convenient loot pickup. Wei Young clicked without hesitation. Out popped a shiny trinket, Goblin Champion necklace. Strength plus 3, agility plus 3. He slipped it on, and the stone pulsed. Butterfly effect plus 1 point. He smirked. 6 free stat points this early, equivalent to 2 whole levels. Kim had died for it, and Wei Young thought, nice necklace. Shame about the original owner. Chainsaw Boy crouched by the body, muttering that it looked tasteless. Wei Young ignored him, picked up the nearest chainsaw, and fed it straight into an orc's mouth. 1 rev later, The orc's skull split in half like he shrugged. Don't feel the sure. The necklace had boosted his strength to 19, but he was already at 3 points here where there didn't change how easily heads popped. Then the dungeon wrapped up. All monsters cleared. Rift collapsing in 3 minutes. Translation: leave now or vanish into pixel dust. Nobody knew what happened to players left behind, because bodies disappeared along with the gates. No response, just delete. Young strolled toward the portal, jacket torn open, muscles gleaming black with armor. He glanced back at Kim's body, motionless on the stone floor. Then another figure stood in front of him. The boy, the wrench kid. The brat declared he wanted to stay with Bad Move. Young shot him down instantly, ordering him out. The kid begged, whined. Young finally grabbed his shoulders, frowning, and growled. The system popped up his status window. Endurance 1. Agility 4. Power 19 plus 3 necklace 28 total. Concentration 1. Mana 1. In short, stronger than a level 9 who went all in on strength, an absolute unit. Meanwhile, Wrench Boy clung to his shirt, tears dripping, crying about regressing 10 years into the past. Young snapped at him, quit whining and be a man. The boy, fists clenched, yelled that even 10 years wouldn't change his miserable life. That's why he wanted to follow Young, not as dead weight, but as his hero's assistant. Young's lips curled into a grin. Funny kid. His name, Kim Min-soo. And the only thing that made him interesting was knowing the future 10 years ahead. Min-soo promised he wouldn't disgrace his name. He wanted his life to mean something. Problem was, regression wasn't rare. Everyone had gone back, so his chance at rewriting destiny was slim. 10 years of mediocrity awaited him, clearing baby dungeons, killing weak, but hitching himself to Korea's strongest player. That, he figured, was his ticket to relevance. They walked out of the collapsing dungeon together. Outside, Min-soo begged again, not to be just a henchman, but Young's right hand once he became the world's #1. Young tested him with a challenge. Name 10 people he'd meet in the future, with their names, faces, and levels. Min-soo agreed. Young's tone dropped cold. Don't even think about lying. Age wouldn't save him. They exchanged. Min-soo ran off, elated, like he'd just been knighted. Young chuckled, shaking his head. Really funny kid. 3 days later, the world was chaos. Regressors hid the truth at first. Not that anyone would have believed them. Monsters were real, sure, but time people would just call them insane. And selfishness was the bigger reason. They wanted to play the future differently, without anyone stealing their script. Cities burned. Monsters rampaged. News feeds choked with rumors. Who would win the 2024 election? How to profit off the stock market. Sports leagues collapsing because too many bettors knew the results. Even scam regressors popped up, pretending to predict the future, for the butterfly effect was already shaking everything. Sitting on a couch, TV flickering, Young watched it unfold. A man on the screen introduced himself. Yoon Moon-young. He called the event a catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. The world had become a game. All players had regressed. Beside him sat Lee Dong-wook, director of the Asia-Pacific Players Association. On live broadcast, he reassured the public regression was a blessing. Players would grow stronger faster, humanity would be safer, lives wouldn't change much. Just a few greedy players trying to sell info. Nothing major. Young scoffed. The man was sugarcoating apocalypse. But then came the mention of the last dungeon. Dong-wook admitted the timing was no regression occurred 3 hours after 21 chosen players entered that dungeon. Young froze, leaning forward. So that was it. 10 years from now, the final dungeon opens, and 3 hours after entry, the whole world rewinds. The host asked the big question, what happened then? Just then, they announced a commercial break. Apocalypse on Earth, humanity on the edge, and these clowns still needed. Add Young cursed at the screen. Grinning to himself, he muttered about the strongest player. Finally, it clicked. The reason those construction shop rookies called him to them, it wasn't an insult, it was worship. He looked out the window. Butterfly effect plus 1 point. All because he taped film to the apparently. In his past life, he couldn't even be bothered to winterize. Drinking water, sitting on the couch, scratching his nose, everything earned him points. 37 in the system was practically bribing him to exist. He wondered, without this broken mechanic, how the hell had he become Korea's strongest in his last anticipation simmered. The weak always bowed to the strong. He learned that as a kid, fist in his collar, being shaken down in alleys. That's why he chased money. That's why he sold himself to wars. Power wasn't a choice, it was survival. And now there was an actual title for it. On TV, the reporter gleefully counted down, pointing to 3 statues. Lee Hwa-young, Park Moo-sun, Choi Chul-sun. Korea's heroes who entered the last, the crowd cheered like sheep. Hwa-young froze, petrified by the sight of his own stone face. That's me. His hand gripped the TV screen. Jaw in his past life, he'd been nothing but the most expensive mercenary consumable, disposable. But now, 3 days after regression, they'd already built a cult around him. The reporter drooled about how only those three knew what happened inside the dungeon, and how they alone had hoarded unique items and legendary skills. Then came a cherry on top. The World Players Association decreed all last dungeon players would be pardoned of their crimes. Every crime. Murder? Theft? Cool. Bot crimes? Don't worry, hero. The host frowned weakly, asking if that was really necessary. Dong-wook just shrugged. Of course it was. After all, who would dare tell gods to follow mortal laws? Wai-young shut the TV off with a snap. He'd learned two things. 1. Everyone was hunting him. 2. He could legally beat them to death for it. He smirked, pulled on a hoodie, and strapped a mask across his face. Butterfly effect. 1 point. Even hiding his face earned him perks. The system loved a good disguise. He sprinted through the city. Notifications chimed with each step. 55 agility points later, he was practically a rocket. He vaulted rooftops, eyes glowing red, and landed in Gwangwaman Square. And there was his statue. Shadow of Death, Lee Wai-young. He stared at the engraving. 2 horizontal lines and 1 vertical, his middle finger immortalized in stone. Typical. Beside him stood Park Mu-sung's statue, Emperor of the Sword. Chul-sung's statue, King of Poisons, dramatic captions about saving humanity etched beneath them. Wai-young folded his arms and shook his head. Humanity really needed better role then. Right on cue, some wannabe punk in a white jacket smashed the head off his statue with a mace. Dust clouded the square as the punk grinned viciously. Inventory flash, mace hidden. Message received, he wanted to fight. Wai-young calmly narrowed his eyes. The brat turned and ran. Wrong move. With 55 agility, Wai-young blurred after him, caught him by the throat, and hoisted him up like a misbehaving dog. Know what this means? Wai-young asked with a sinister smile, squeezing. It means I already know where you were running to. The boy fumbled for his weapon. Wai-young ripped it away. Mace of the Orc Champion. Chance to stun 25%, plus 30 damage, plus 10 strength. He thanked him. Who do you work for? Wai-young demanded, voice like frost. No way this kid pulled a rare weapon in 5 days solo. He was guild trash, plain and simple. The kid stammered, laughed nervously, demanded to be let go. Wai-young's grip tightened. 10 seconds, he warned dead-eyed. Tell me who you are, or you will disappear without trace. The guy blurted out that the one who sent him was Kim Chong-bai from General Guild, and that this is their first step on Project Lee Wai-young. He pressed harder. Lee Wai-young's project? What the hell was that? Wai-young listened intently as Chong-bai stammered out the details. According to the man, Lee Wai-young's project wasn't just a name. It was the General Guild's operation aimed at taking every skill and item Wai-young had collected in his previous life. What comes first? Wai-young asked. Chong-bai's voice trembled. It's stealth, I swear. Don't kill me. It will happen in 3 days at the gate to the werewolf dungeon. Wai-young leaned forward and ordered Chong-bai to tell him everything. The man explained that the werewolf dungeon, where Wai-young had once obtained the rare stealth skill, would reopen in 3 days. How do they know all this? Wai-young asked. Kim Chong-bai hesitated, then said he didn't know the source, only that it was reliable. How do they plan to steal all my skills? Wai-young asked. 3 days before the dungeon opens, about 100 players will be on full alert, Chong-bai admitted. They're confident you'll come for the skill you had in your past life. Wai-young's eyes narrowed. 100 regress players. It wouldn't be easy. Min-soo arrived shortly after, frowning. Kim Chong-bai is lying. Can I just kill him? Wai-young shook his head. First, let's hear what he's collected. Then Min-soo explained the General Guild's target, the stealth skill. Wai-young's lips curved into a slight smile. One of them was lying. The blue dialogue box confirmed it. You changed the future. Plus 1 extra point. Kim Chong-bai insisted the werewolf dungeon would open pointing at Kim Min-soo. Kim Chong-bai accused him of deception. Without warning, Wai-young extended his black aura-wrapped hands, lifting both men by their necks. Prove your case. Kim Min-soo revealed his phone. Still no news about Lee Wai-young. Will he show up at the werewolf dungeon on January 7th? Wai-young's eyes narrowed. January 7th. Tomorrow, Kim Min-soo continued, showing the dungeon's history. Early players had failed because werewolves were fast, vicious, and moved in packs. Beginner players could barely survive. Over time, the dungeon was abandoned, but the monsters remained, and now everyone hoped a strong player would appear, someone who could finally deal with them. Just then, Wai-young asked Chong-bai if everything that Min-soo said were true, but Chong-bai couldn't reply because he knew that Wai-young had seen through as he cursed, calling Wai-young a bastard, but without wasting time, the protagonist snapped Chong-bai's neck. Kim Chong-bai had fallen to the ground dead. Wai-young noted quietly that in his previous life, he hadn't killed him. Now, the werewolf dungeon would open. Hua Young folded his arms, speculating that a certain substance might act against werewolves, like rat poison against rats. He needed to learn more. Kim Min-soo asked why he cared about a place he had already visited. Hua Young's answer was simple. He hadn't regressed. Upon hearing this, Min-soo gasped at the shocking truth. After that, they discussed things like how to level up. Hua Young checked his stats. Level 2, Stamina 1, Strength 28, Mana 1, Agility 55, Concentration 1, Achievements, Brave Beginner, Skills, First Level Butterfly Effect, First Level Armor. Including points in reserve, he calculated that his stats were equivalent to a level 80 player. Kim Min-soo warned, even at that level, killing werewolves wouldn't be easy. Hua Young frowned, realizing the dungeon's minimum level requirement, level 5, was higher than his actual level. He needed to train. Where can I level up? He asked. Kim Min-soo explained that only goblin and orc gates were open now. New gates would appear gradually, and the werewolf gate would open tomorrow. Only 4 days had passed since the games Hua Young noted that goblins and orcs were uninteresting, but to his surprise, he found them cute. The blue dialogue box confirmed strength increase, strength 190. Armor glowed blue, amplifying his stats. He asked Kim Min-soo about the blue aura from past levels. Kim Min-soo nodded. The armor's title, Shadow of Death, came from that aura. Goblins approached, malicious smiles on their faces. Hua Young leapt, breaking the floor beneath him. With a black hand wrapped in blue energy, he crushed them. Dialogue boxes confirmed. You changed the future. Plus 1 extra point. With speed and agility, the goblins didn't stand a chance. Min-soo stood the human embodiment of a buffering screen, trying to figure out how on earth Hua Young managed to know less than non-players. Maybe he really hadn't regressed like the rest. Hua Young, on the other hand, had long run out of patience. His voice cracked through the air with the precision of a thrown dagger, demanding an answer. That alone was enough to make Min-soo stiffen like a student caught cheating mid-exam. He began explaining, hurriedly, nervously, that a skill stone was exactly what it sounded like. A rock that carried a skill, found near a monster's heart. Each one glowed with its own smug little color code. White for normal, purple for rare, yellow for unique, red for the kind of rainbow that made adventurers go feral. The stealth skill, he added, rumored to be lurking inside the werewolf dungeon, was rare, which meant its gem would shine purple, elegant, expensive, and very stabby now level of hard to get. Hua Young raised a brow, because apparently, this world came with a color-coded manual he hadn't received. Min-soo, seeing the look, rushed to clarify that skill classes weren't just they showed rarity. How many copies of a particular skill existed? Rare or lower meant more duplicates out there. For instance, stealth wasn't exactly a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. There were others who could vanish just as gracefully somewhere in the world. Hua Young asked if that meant unique and legendary stones existed only once. Min-soo grinned and held up one finger, proudly confirming it like a magician about to reveal his final trick. Oh, and by the way, skills could level up too. The higher the level, the flashier the effects, because of course they could. When Hua Young asked what unique skills even were, Min-soo blinked hard, like he'd just been asked to explain quantum mechanics to a pigeon. He didn't know, not even slightly. Meanwhile, the main character glanced down at another blue box, as if the game itself decided to flex. Butterfly Effect, Level 1. As the only one who cannot repeat this, you will gain bonus points for every action that alters the future. Min-soo just scratched his head like he'd been handed a riddle and a headache in one go. Hua Young waved it off. The details didn't matter. What mattered was the next day, as he walked down the street, the screen above his head displayed. Hua Young, Level 5. Around the corner, Kim Min-soo asked what the plan was, trying to sound tactical, but mostly sounding like a loyal sidekick in a B-tier crime flick. Hua Young pointed toward the square, calm, precise, saying he'd handle everything himself. All Min-soo had to do was scout, observe, and report anything remotely. Min-soo nodded eagerly, eyes glowing with the kind of loyalty that made even dogs look uncommitted. And as Hua Young watched him go, he realized something. The gates of the werewolf dungeon would soon open right in the distance. 100 players from the general guild were already gathering, waiting for Hua Young like storm chasers before a tornado, which only confirmed what Kim Chul-sun had said all along. This wasn't rumor. This was prophecy warming up. It's the first move in Hua Young's plan was simple in theory, suicidal in practice. Get into the gate before anyone else. The werewolf dungeon only allowed 5 players at a time, and according to Kim Min-soo, the system wasn't the kind to negotiate. Miss that window, and the glory, plus the skill stone, belonged to whoever got in first. Hua Young checked his wristwatch. 7 minutes left, just enough time for everyone around him to lose their minds. Someone in the crowd shouted like they were narrating a history documentary. claiming this was the exact spot where Lee Wai-young obtained his rare stealth skill in his previous life, which was impressive considering the man in question was standing a few meters away, very much unbothered. Then came the blonde, the unofficial hype man of chaos, raising his fist and declaring that the gate would open in 5 minutes, and that the General Guild would make history today. He promised they'd surpass even Lee Wai-young's legend, which was bold talk for a man seconds away from eating humble pie. He barked orders to stay alert since Wai-young hadn't shown up yet. Meanwhile, Wai-young was already there, grinning like the villain in someone else's success story. A blue dialogue box popped up in front of him. Gate will appear in 30 seconds. The crowd began the ritualistic countdown, 10 to 1, because apparently no one in this world could resist a bit of theatrical tension. When the red gate tore through the air like reality's worst paper cut, the blonde yelled for his team to charge in and make history. One waved to his friend, promising to be back soon, the kind of promise that aged like milk. His yellow-haired companion yelled back not to die in there. Then someone noticed him, the Lee Wai-young, sprinting toward the gate. The moment of realization spread like panic through the ranks. Weapons came up, voices rose, but the main character didn't even blink. He thought briefly that it had only been 5 days since regression. By any logical measure, no one's agility should have exceeded 50 yet, but logic could sit this one out. Wai-young wasn't here to obey physics. He blitzed past the armed players like they were NPCs buffering mid-attack. The crowd erupted. How's he that fast? That kind of agility shouldn't exist. Don't just stand there. Chase him. They didn't need to bother. The red portal swallowed him whole, and the last guy chasing him stopped dead as a message glowed in front of his face. Player limit reached. Kim Min-soo stood frozen, mouth half open, like a man who just watched someone outclick destiny inside. The night forest waited. 5 figures, pale and startled, stared at Lee Wai-young. One of them even said his name, trembling like someone meeting their childhood nightmare in person. Wai-young found it amusing, convenient even. They all knew who he was thanks to regression. No introductions required. Efficiency was a gift. Blue boxes flickered beside the players, and the one with blue hair rallied them to attack. Whips gleamed green in the dark, not exactly intimidating until the system labeled them. Goblin Chieftain's whip, low damage, allows control of damage +1. Not impressive, but they gave it their best anime yell and charged. Wai-young triggered his armor skill, his arms and neck turning obsidian black. The whips coiled around him, tugging his limbs apart. Another blue pop-up appeared like a sarcastic referee. You change the future, +1 extra point. The blue-haired one fumbled out a net. Desperate times, desperate props. Wai-young almost laughed. They'd realized fast that they couldn't damage him, so they went for restraint instead. Clever, naive, but clever. Moments later, the net was on them instead, and Wai-young crouched beside their tangled. He said it was a nice try. Pity it didn't work. That's when the forest shifted. Growls crawled through the air. Red eyes gleamed in the dark. Black wolves emerged, fangs dripping, breath hot and furious. Wai-young tilted his head, unimpressed, and asked why they looked so angry. The wolves didn't answer, too busy auditioning for a horror movie. He turned to the bound players, half amused, half serious, and asked if they wanted to be snacks tonight. Their chorus of terrified denials filled the silence, and he nodded solemnly. Good choice. The wolves lunged. From the sidelines, the blue-haired player stammered that Lee Wai-young was the one in the black shirt, insisted the werewolves had him cornered. The blue-haired one sighed in defeat, already mourning their fate, convinced they were all about to die. One of the wolves twitched, and that was its final mistake. Lee Wai-young rose to his feet, his fist blackened with the armor skill still pulsing through it. He didn't roar, didn't posture, just raised his hand, and every wolf around him scattered like trained soldiers remembering their commander. The players watching were frozen in disbelief, their expressions somewhere between reverence and regret. Wai-young only muttered that he had simply remembered it once. Wolves and dogs were nearly the same save for what centuries of human affection had bred out of one and hardened into the other. He remembered learning that trick years ago, during a smuggler hunt of all things. A guard dog had sunk its teeth into his arm, and on pure instinct, he'd grabbed its muzzle, locking eyes until the animal recognized the hierarchy. The dog had backed off. That time, he let it live. But these weren't dogs. They were monsters, and monsters didn't get mercy. A snarl snapped him back. A wolf lunged, and Wai-young's hands closed around its jaws, crushing inward until the bones folded like paper. The forest echoed with a wet crunch. No drama, no hesitation, just efficient brutality. Several wolves circled him now, but he didn't flinch. The man in the black shirt, probably still catching up to reality, asked why he didn't just kill all of them. Wai-young replied, calm as ever, that there was no need. If every monster died, the dungeon would collapse. the gate would vanish, and outside, the General Guild would immediately know who cleared it. They'd flip the whole of Korea, try to find him. He didn't need that kind of attention, not yet. 2 more wolves growled, saliva bubbling at their jaws. 3 charged, fangs bared. Wei Young didn't even blink. He just murmured that it wouldn't be enough. A heartbeat later, 3 corpses hit the ground. The onlookers didn't even see what happened. They just saw him standing behind the bodies, dusting his hands like he'd finished light work. He turned to the stunned players and began speaking almost absently, as though recounting a story. After the game began, rifts tore across the world. Monsters spilled through them like divine punishment. Cities burned. Humanity cracked. Everyone thought it was the end. To combat it, a system appeared. Rules, levels, dungeons, a game wrapped in if you wanted to stop the end, you had to play. But not everyone agreed. Some believed it was all divine will, judgment for human arrogance. Fanatics appeared, shouting repentance into the ruins. Somewhere, a man in a black hoodie raised his arms, declaring that they accepted the will of the Lord and repented from mankind's sins. Around him, green-robed zealots clasped their hands, chanting that goblins were God's little messengers, because apparently theology had lost all quality control. Faith, Wei Young thought, was a flexible word. Guilds had worshippers now, fans, members, believers. They grew, fought, consumed. Dungeons were their altars. And the irony, those monsters they hunted provided resources, energy, weapons, profit. Skill stones fetched fortunes, and clearing a gate earned both money and applause. Religion and business, salvation and power, the perfect merger. He looked down at the men before him. Calmly, he asked who was in charge. The group muttered the name, Choi Chul's son, their supposed main character. Wei Young blinked, as if someone had just called him by a name written on he'd seen that name before, carved on the statue, right next to his own. He asked if they'd come here for stealth. The dark-haired one stammered that they were only following his orders. The red-haired one, apparently the group's emotional support hothead, snapped and called him a traitor. Wei Young paused, not for dramatic effect, but because choosing which idiot to deal with first required mental. Then he sat beside the redhead, laid a hand on his shoulder, and smiled. One squeeze later, the boy's shoulder cracked like cheap glassware. His scream echoed through the dungeon. Wei Young grinned, eyes flaring red. Rising, he repeated Choi Chul's son's name under his breath. If memory served, that man was the head of the General Guild, one of the heroes who'd entered the final dungeon with him, one of the statues in Gwangwaman Square. He remembered the government report about the statue erection, all fancy speeches and zero sincerity. He had never even met Chul's son, yet they called him colleagues. Apparently, dying near each other once made you friends. Now, that same man's lackeys were here, trying to steal his skill. Typical. Still, Wei Young wasn't even mad. Greed was human nature, the engine of progress, as he liked to think. He opened one eye. Shadows rippled across the ground, and a pack of black wolves materialized. Good, he thought. There are always 25 werewolves in this dungeon, no more, no less. Kill a few. The system spawned replacements. A perfectly balanced ecosystem of cannon. Convenient timing meant he wouldn't even have to lift a finger. Clutching the net in his hand, Wei Young muttered that he hoped Choi Chul's son would forgive him for killing his men. The dark-haired boy made a pathetic plea, the kind that didn't even sound convincing to himself. Then the net flew. The wolves lunged. Just as they died, the gate was now open for 4 more candidates. Just then, a blond guy in a red sweatshirt appeared through the portal, looking far too cheerful for someone walking into carnage. Wei Young noted the system rule, dungeon cap, 5 players. When the last 4 idiots died, new ones could enter. And now the new batch had arrived, just in time to die creatively. He stood amid corpses, human and werewolf, hands dripping crimson. Extra points, 93. The number looked pretty beside his name, like an accidental compliment. 3 guys and a girl charged from the gate, green whips blazing, probably thinking they'd make a few seconds later. They were wrapped up and netted, matching the previous way. Young folded his arms and asked which of the wolves had stone. The blonde said it was the one with white. Finally, some honesty. While Young mused, impressed by how quickly this batch surrendered. Bodies and blood paved the floor, limbs scattered like bad decor. He walked through it all, crouched beside the trembling white-browed werewolf, and crushed its skull with one hand. The sound was wet and final. People from the General Guild froze. Watching Wei Young rip apart the werewolf's chest barehanded wasn't exactly morale-boosting. He shoved his hand into the corpse and grimaced. Disgusting, his expression said, for he made a mental note to train Kim Min-soo as a professional butcher. Someone had to handle the messy jobs. From the gore, he pulled out a glowing purple stone. Skill acquired stealth. The system kindly explained the invisibility duration tied to mana. The guy in green sighed, mentioning it was the same skill used by the hero of the last dungeon. The girl muttered that it could have sold for millions or made her stronger. But fate had a cruel sense of humor. It had returned to its rightful owner. Why Young smirked. Selling it for money was tempting, but why trade power for paper? From the start, true dominance wasn't bought, it was built. He remembered the orphanage, the battlefield, the years spent clawing through hopelessness. All he wanted now was power, the kind that broke reality in half. He pressed the stone to his lips and whispered to himself, not a prayer, but a declaration. He would rewrite history. Stealth skill locked. Unlocks at level 10. He frowned. Level 6, for more to go. How tedious. When the blonde asked what was wrong, Why Young muttered that strength meant nothing if numbers held him back. He stared at his stats. Plus 102 extra points. Perfect. All into strength. Strength 289 plus 3. He figured he'd use stealth once he left the dungeon. After all, 100 unfriendly fans from the General Guild were waiting outside to kill him for that same skill. Even with his absurd stats, fighting all 100 would be inconvenient. And as long as one werewolf remained alive, the dungeon would never close. So he'd just leave one breathing. How generous of him. 3 punches later, 3 werewolves died, and the system went nuts. Level up. Plus 3 extra points. Level 10. Stealth unlocked. Why Young raised his transparent hand, eyebrow arched. The blonde explained that at higher levels, even his clothes would Why Young look down, unimpressed. So basically, level up or streak, he thought. He tested it and promptly vanished. The guild panicked. They begged. He didn't care. They had come to steal his power. Instead, they donated experience points. Moments later, the gate exploded open. The crowd outside gasped. Another death, another chance. No one noticed the invisible man casually strolling past them, naked, transparent, and annoyingly Kim Min-soo caught a glimpse and shrieked. Why Young pressed a finger to his lips and smirked. Level up first, explanations later. Why Young asked if Min-soo saw a taxi pointing lazily in the direction. He told him to go take it. Min-soo nodded, frowning like someone being sent on an errand he didn't volunteer for. Moments later, headlines exploded across every major channel. Lee Why Young appears, returns for the skills he once owned. 8 members of the General Guild slain by werewolves. Werewolf skulls crushed. Lee Why Young's brutal hunting method. Is the monster unstoppable again? 5 days since the start of the game, and already the werewolf dungeon was Why Young leaned his cheek against his hand. Staring at his phone like a man scrolling through a mildly annoying meme, Min-soo jogged over and waved his own phone, eyes wide. Young, you need to see this. On screen, the news anchor looked far too cheerful to be talking about death. They were discussing Why Young's reappearance, trying to make sense of it like gossiping about a celebrity sighting. One panelist, bald, loud, and overconfident, claimed it was because of star quality. Why Young blinked. Star Min-soo leaned in and said they were debating it. The bald man elaborated. Before entering the final dungeon in the previous timeline, Why Young had famously flipped off every reporter in sight. And somehow people had loved it. He's strong, unshakable, and doesn't care about anything. That's the kind of player the world worships. Why Young smirked faintly. At least this guy can talk properly. The host announced that the chairman of the Players Skills and Technology Association wanted to a calm voice came through. An older man with pale hair and unnerving yellow eyes introduced himself as Park Young-sik. He began, if today's topic is Lee Why Young's future actions, then I have something to say. The studio fell silent. Park continued. When Lee Why Young appeared at the werewolf dungeon, the game was already over. The other panelists exploded in, what are you saying? That's Park didn't flinch. Even with chaos around him, his tone stayed steady. Too calm for comfort. Min-soo whispered that Park Young-sik was one of the most influential figures in the world of players, someone whose every statement was recorded and analyzed. But as regressors returned and information became public, the once powerful association had lost much of its control. Still, Park wasn't just some washed-up academic. He pulled something from beneath the desk, a head, a werewolf's head. The studio screamed. One girl kept repeating the same shriek like a broken alarm. Park placed the crushed skull on the he said he'd studied dungeon creatures for over a decade, but this was the first time he'd seen marks like these. See here, he said, pointing a finger mark about this size. The skull bones are far denser than a human's. Statistically, only a level -40 player with max strength could crush one. The bald man turned red. Are you implying a level 5 player did that? Park didn't argue. He simply stated that the current highest dungeon was level 14, and even its gear couldn't cause such damage. Everyone froze. Why Young chuckled quietly at the screen. The panic, the denial, the self-preserving outrage. It was all so predictable. He thought about how these same people, from guild executives to dungeon corporations, thrived on keeping the system stable. If it turned out he really did kill werewolves with a flick of his finger, the entire world economy would spiral. The regressors' morale would shatter. The monopolies would crumble. Park calmly concluded, "The game is over. In this life, Lee Wai-young will once again be one of the final dungeon's entrants, and he will clear it." After Wai-young was done with the news, he leaned back, thinking that everything he did now was diverging from his previous life, earning him extra points every time. The only constant was the world's obsession with strength. And right now, his level was all that mattered. Despite his monstrous stats, he realized that being a low-level player still limited everything. Dungeons, skills, even stealth activation. If he stopped growing, every player out there would turn on him like starving without wasting time. He set out to level up in a gate. Dungeons have level gates, he thought. If you can't meet them, you can't enter, and you can't grow stronger. He snapped a werewolf's finger absent-mindedly and muttered that leveling up through them was the fastest method for now. Wai-young held a struggling werewolf by the neck. "I'm getting bored," he said. "Let's find something else to kill." Min-soo, ever the reluctant voice of reason, argued that this dungeon was still the best spot for now. Tossing the corpse aside, Wai-young asked which dungeon was next. Min-soo reported that the level 14 Blue Monkey dungeon had opened, but that no one could enter yet. Wai-young tilted his head. "Is there even a level 14 player out there right now?" Min-soo shook his head. "Only 5 days since the start. It's impossible, even without sleeping," which meant no one could enter the dungeon. Wai-young's grin returned. "Then the blue monkeys will come to us." Won't exactly. The same thing had happened in his previous life. The dungeon spawned too early, and the monsters wreaked havoc before anyone could stop them. Min-soo nervously explained that the blue monkeys weren't easy prey. They were fast, smart, and adaptive. Wai-young wasn't worried. His dialogue box flashed. "Extra points, 324. The dialogue box blinked again. 324 extra points, and not a single level 14 player in sight. He brushed it off with a quiet whatever. Stepping through the red portal with Kim Min-soo, Wai-young felt the static of the world ripple against his skin. That explained why not a single soul was here, not even a desperate scavenger. Hands in his pockets, he muttered something about the place being too. Min-soo pointed the way with a nervous grin, claiming he'd seen blue monkeys before, on TV of course. He reminded Wai-young that those things weren't just strong, they were clever. Ranged attacks, mimicry, and just enough curiosity to make them insufferable. Then came a loud honk. Somewhere ahead, a car alarm blared, followed by metallic laughter, the kind that only homicidal primates could produce. "Means sushadith. Looks like the monsters learned to drive," he muttered under his breath. Wai-young snorted, half amused, half annoyed. He remembered their speed, their arrogance. Annoying creatures, fast, loud, and barely worth the effort. A system message popped in front of him again. 521 additional points. He barely glanced before assigning them to dexterity. A surge of blue aura flared around him, and then he was gone. A blur cutting through the wind like it owed him rent. Min-soo shielded his face from the gust, shouting for him to slow down. He didn't. The next thing he saw was chaos. Blue monkeys tumbling, dialogue boxes popping, and Wai-young standing in the middle like the world's most violent monkeys tried to retreat into the portal, screeching, clawing, only to find it locked. Just as players couldn't enter over their limit, monsters couldn't leave. A poetic kind of prison. Wai-young grinned at their panic. Even beasts, he thought, were the same face when trapped. Fear was universal. Min-soo could barely process it. The creatures said to be the destroyers of humanity were now running like guilty. Wai-young chuckled darkly. More predator than man, and charged again. Blue blood splattered as dialogue boxes spammed with level-up notifications. He opened his status window mid-slaughter. Level 17, Endurance 1, Agility 573 plus 3. Strength 289 plus 3 plus 3, Concentration 1, Mana, bonus points, 212. Min Sugalkith. 6 days since the game started, and he was already level 17. Wai-young leaned on his knees, panting. The exhaustion gnawed at him, his stamina stat mocking him like a cheap, but it didn't matter. Every level up refilled his tank. All he needed was a few more dead monkeys. He pushed more points into stamina, the aura bursting blue around him again. The monkeys shrieked and threw garbage, literal garbage at him. It was hard to tell if it was an attack or a protest. He just caught one by the tail and used it as a club. Efficient, messy, borderline comedic. Min-soo stood frozen, watching the carnage unfold. When it was over, the parking lot looked like a monkey apocalypse. Catching his breath, Wai-young cursed under his breath. The cameras. Every bloody frame of this massacre was now immortalized on CCTV. Min-soo's voice broke the silence. They had to destroy the gate. Wai-young frowned. Why? A gate like this could be a gold mine. Monsters on tap, easy farming. But Min-soo explained that if lower dungeons weren't destroyed, higher ones wouldn't spawn. Simple ecosystem logic. Why Young realized he was right. Humanity was too selfish to ever coordinate that kind of restraint, which in his case worked perfectly. The more he cleared, the more chaos he'd cause for others. And honestly, that sounded fun. Minsu added that closing this gate so early would trigger the appearance of level 15 dungeons in just a few hours, something that in their last life took over 9 days. Why Young raised an eyebrow. How did he even know that? Minsu showed his phone, a site called The Games, an online community where players shared dungeon data, completion times, and ranks. The whole thing was monitored by the World Players Association, which meant these records were practically official. Why Young understood immediately. If rankings determined recognition and recognition determined entry into the last dungeon, then this leaderboard wasn't just numbers, it was fate. He grinned. Fearless, that would be his nickname. It didn't mean much, maybe it never did, but it felt right. Minsu nodded quickly, already typing it in. The name Fearless didn't sound right to Why Young, but he let it slide. Minsu was already registering it. The phone flashed. Blue Monkey Dungeon cleared. Level 14, January 8th, 1534. ID, Fearless. Online comments exploded. People warned that level 15 monsters were next. After the game began, gate shelters were built, dome-shaped fortresses to shield civilians when a gate appeared. Inside one, a little girl complained to her mother about being stuck there. The mother smiled weakly, promising players would clear it soon. Then a shout. Someone claimed the blue ape gate was gone. Another mocked him until a screen behind them lit up with footage of Why Young crushing blue monkeys. The crowd erupted. Some doubted, others cheered. Whoever Fearless was, they called him their leader. Why Young and Minsu walked through the city. Minsu said that in his past life, Japan cleared a level 15 dungeon after 41 days, while Korea failed. Why Young asked what monster awaited them next. Minsu said a giant bear, and that below level 20 monsters still lacked abilities. Once they started progress, he muttered about the 300 kilometers trek, but Why Young told him to move. Dialogue boxes followed behind them. You changed the future. You 1 point. Minsu, curious, asked what counted as changing the future. He gave an example about dropping a pen. Why Young replied drily, maybe. Minsu concluded that even walking changed the future. A red truck screeched behind them. The driver yelled for them to get off the road. Minsu apologized, flustered, but Why Young approached with a smile. A moment later, he was gone, sprinting beside the moving truck. The driver panicked as Why Young matched his speed, warning him to drive safely if he wanted to live. The system chimed again. You changed the future. You 1 point. The driver paled, muttered that no human could move that fast after only 9 days of gameplay. Why Young didn't care. Every change widened the gap between him and the regression memories were useless once the future shifted, and he was already ahead. Clenching his fist, he thought about level 20 monsters. Soon, a bear the size of a house, he muttered that monsters start using skills at level 20, then drove his fist through its gut. 3 bears attacked. He snapped one's neck, grinned, and crushed the rest one by one. Level up, plus 3 points. Future online despair grew. Players complained they couldn't even beat level 16 monsters. Others joked about quitting, but someone noticed Fearless posts. One called him Korea's savior. Minsu froze mid-scroll. Another dungeon had been cleared. Why Young asked who. Minsu said Poison Choi. Why Young recognized the name. Choi Chaeol's son, once the Poison King and future guild leader. He laughed, saying things were getting. Choi had cleared level 16 faster than expected, almost as if waiting for Why Young figured he'd regained an old skill early. He ordered Min-Su to find out what weapon Choi once used. Min-Su said it was a black dagger, the kind people once said could drown the planet in blood. Why Young dismissed the drama, only asking what monster dropped it. Min-Su said it was the Golden Leopard, a level 20 beast. Why Young smirked, saying it didn't. Moments later, new posts appeared online. Level 17 Golem Dungeon cleared. Level 18 Raging Ogre Dungeon cleared. Why Young, eyes on the horizon, asked where the level 20 dungeon would open next. The level 19 dungeon is near Gangnam Station, and the level 20 dungeon is in Yuldong Park in Bundang, Gyeonggi Province. Why Young replied that it was 30 minutes without taking traffic into account. Kim Min-Su said that they would be lucky if it appeared in a park with no people. Why Young smirked, saying that even if there were people, they wouldn't be able to go, and they could watch him retrieve his weapons. Why Young's status window read, level 21, stamina 213, agility 573 plus 3. Why Young told himself to invest the extra points into strength. The dialogue boxes confirmed the increase. Strength 1033. Clenching his fist, he said that now he could fight with his bear. Kim Min-Su awkwardly replied that he could see. The dialogue box announced, The player's strength stat has exceeded 1,000 for the first time. New achievement unlocked. King of Power. Petrification skill acquired. Petrification first level turns the opponent's body to stone for 3 seconds. Duration is proportional to the player's strength stat. Wei Young pointed a palm wrapped in blue aura at Kim Min-soo and asked if he could move. Kim Min-soo confirmed he couldn't. He asked if it was truly petrification and if it had reached the power of a Wei Young replied affirmatively and quizzically noted that Kim Min-soo was always surprised at his abilities. Kim Min-soo said it was amazing because Wei Young had just received the skill that Emperor Yun Song-wai had. Wei Young asked about the Emperor. Min-soo opened something on his phone, showing Wei Young a large list of past life dungeon records. The Chinese king, ID Yun Song-wai, was ranked first, nicknamed the Emperor.